I've got 10 o'clock, and so we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Board of Community Supervision to order. And at this time, I will entertain a invocation by our chairman, our chaplain, council, Mr. Knott. All that rolled into one.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your blessings. We ask for your covering and guidance in this day as we go forth in this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And I understand that we have some members that have called in, so I'm sure we have a quorum to proceed with our meetings. And let me just welcome everybody, those that's in our audience, those members that work for us, and then those visiting members that come in to see how good we are. So thank you all for what it is that y'all do on a continuous basis to support the mission of the Board of Community Supervision. Could I get a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Of course, you have engaged in your packet, and I think it was emailed out to you, the minutes from March 21st board meeting, and if you haven't, it's attached in your folder today. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving of the minutes from March 21st, 2019? May I have an aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now it's at the Commissioner's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could find out who's on the phone so I'll know who we've got on the line.
Hey, Michael, this is Perry.
Hey, Mr. Barnard, thank you.
Hello there.
Hey, everybody.
Good morning.
Is that the only one? Okay, just want to know who I was going to be talking to. So, all right, very good. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to yield a little bit of my time through my remarks to some different individuals. I wanted to start by just telling you, Commissioner Fitzgerald, I stole from you. I'm going to just admit it. I'm going to confess. When you go to DBHDD meetings, they do something that I think in just my talking pretty darn cool. They start the meeting off, and it's centered around what we're all about.
Yes.
And it's about helping individuals. It's about giving individuals an opportunity to change and using those individuals to impact others. They always have a speaker. Every meeting have always been moved by the short stories that they share. So I'm going to call on Michelle Stanley to introduce our Respect Institute speaker.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have the pleasure to introduce to you guys Suzanne Kilgore. Suzanne is currently working as a case manager for the DUI court and the mental health court in Rockdale's Accountability Court. Suzanne is a long-term recovering individual. I'm not going to steal all of her thunder by sharing the information I have here in her bio because I think it's more impressive to hear her story. So I want to yield the floor to Suzanne.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Kind of calming to see some familiar faces in this room. So with that being said, my name is Suzanne Kilgore, and the title of my story is When at the End of the Road. I was born and raised in Hahara, Georgia, which is a very small town just a bit north of Valdosta. I grew up in a middle-class family, and I have great memories of my childhood. My father was a post commander for the Georgia State Patrol, and my mother was a laboratory technologist in the hospital that I was born in. My dad, being a Georgia State Trooper for 35 years of my life and an important member of the community, was very influential throughout the state of Georgia for his good deeds and his loyal service to the Department of Public Safety. What I was taught about this, that was because my siblings and I carried his last name, must mean that we always act as if someone is watching. Hold your head high and take pride in who you are and never disgrace his good name and reputation. As a child, I was very determined and strong-willed, and I had a hard time accepting that children were to be seen and not heard. My father, when he said the moon was purple, it was purple. No one disputed it. But me, I was the kid that stood up and said, no, the moon is not purple. What I learned from this is that standing up for myself and what I believed to be the truth was a defect in my character, a negative trait that I thought would only cause me pain. When I cried, I was told to dry it up. When I complained about not having something I wanted, I was self-centered. When I wouldn't give up my last piece of candy, I was always selfish. Just out of high school, I started working as an IV therapy technician in the local hospital pharmacy. There I was able to determine that I really wanted to go to pharmacy school. During that time, I had met who I thought was the man of my dreams, and I decided to get married instead of go to school. But I continued to work in that hospital pharmacy, and I became a pharmacy technician. After having my daughter at 20, my husband became very abusive. I can remember peeling myself up off the floor on many occasions, going to work with black eyes and broke fingers, only to make excuses for what had happened. And of course, never allowing anyone to know the truth, especially not my family. This was during this time when my casual use of drugs and alcohol turned to abuse. After 6 years of enduring the abuse, I finally got my parents involved and I was able to get a divorce. But my addiction spiraled out of control to the point to where my job had become my dealer. I was caught diverting narcotics from the pharmacy. I was investigated by the DEA, and my father, being a personal friend, I was only fired and not charged. I knew that my addiction was stronger than much more than I could ever admit, and I was much too ashamed to let that be known or ask for help. So I ran. It was 1986 and I moved to Atlanta, right back to everything that was most familiar, to the abusive ex-husband and to the hospital pharmacy. Once again, the pharmacy became my dealer. The IV drugs of morphine and dilaudid infusions I was compounding for cancer patients became my solution for the pain I was enduring from all the abuse. In the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, again, I was caught. But this time, things were much different in a worse kind of way. I was again investigated by that same DEA agent, but this time I was sent to long-term treatment, where I was arrested and charged with 3 felonies, diversion of narcotics, use of dangerous drugs, Schedule II narcotics, and theft by taking. While in treatment, I was told if I wanted to avoid prison time that I would have to continue treatment for a year in a residential program and attend an paraprofessional group with other nurses, pharmacists, and doctors who had become addicted as a result of their profession. I managed to complete everything that was expected of me except for stay clean. I never once got this concept that staying clean was my ultimate goal. My agenda was to stay out of prison. I don't remember much about what I had learned about addiction, but I do remember hearing one important thing, and that is selfishness and self-centeredness are the core of the disease. I thought that was quite ironic because those were the exact same words that I had heard from it as a child. I continued to use, but now my dealers were not as sophisticated as the once hospital pharmacy, and the drugs were no longer pharmaceutical. I was now shooting heroin in a nasty shooting gallery in downtown Atlanta. I found myself bouncing in and out of NA meetings for another 5 years. Today, I have come to realize that staying clean may not have been my agenda, but the seed of recovery had been planted. On June 2nd, 1991, I wandered into an NA meeting, and finally I was ready to ask for help. On that day, I surrendered to the disease of addiction and I got clean. I carried scars on my arms and an addiction in my veins that I thought could never be fixed or cured. But I knew that through surrender, recovery was possible because I saw it happening in others around me. I was now 32 years old, but I was finally clean. With the help of my parents, I got back up on my feet and I got my daughter back. The impact of my addiction left her with scars that she continues to struggle with today. At 9 years clean, I met the second husband of my dreams in a meeting. Life couldn't be better. Our life became so full that we forgot how we had gotten there. First, we didn't need recovery meetings anymore. We didn't have time for recovery friends anymore. And we certainly didn't need to talk to anyone when issues would arise. As a result of letting go of what had worked for so many years to stay clean, within 6 months we were using together. Little did I know that this would be the beginning of a 6-year meth run that would take me to places and do the things I never imagined myself doing. Before we could even celebrate our first anniversary, we had shot up a successful business. We were homeless, jobless, penniless, and living out of a stolen van. We stole everything that wasn't tied down or locked up to feed our addiction. The days would turn into weeks not even noticing that we had not slept or had a decent meal to eat. In 2003, I caught my next felony charge for manufacturing. I knew that if we could get clean, that we would make it, but if we didn't, we would both end up either in prison or dead. After the scare of my husband going back to prison for the 3rd time, he decided it was time to get clean. But I continued to use for another 3 years, and for whatever reason, my husband stuck by me. I was a 48-year-old woman using large amounts of meth daily for the past 6 years, and I believed that I could never recover from this. But out of fear of losing my marriage, I became willing. Again, at 48 years old, I entered a long-term treatment residential program in Lawrenceville, Georgia called Step by Step, and the healing process began. After I got better, my husband and I were able to heal from the devastation of our marriage. Now a strong woman again, I needed to build myself outside of him. So at 50 years old, I decided I would go back to school. After being told by a friend that because of my age I would never make it through college, only gave me more motivation needed to turn that strong will and that determination that I had as a little girl, that defect of character that I had learned early on to be negative, into an asset and make it work positively in my life. At 54, I walked across the stage and I received my bachelor's degree in psychology. I continued my internship for another 2 years to gain my counseling certification as a substance abuse counselor. I landed my first job as a substance abuse counselor at Viewpoint Health and Court Services. I gained my counseling certification through the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse as a certified addiction recovery empowerment specialist. For the first time in my life, I knew I had a purpose. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that why God had spared me from my addiction. God's plan for me was to use my story and my lived experience as a vessel to help others who suffer from addiction, that they too can find recovery, have a life that is second to none, gain successful careers even as convicted felons. Because of my recovery this year, my husband celebrated 14 years clean. I just celebrated 11 years clean last week, as a matter of fact. I will celebrate, and then we will celebrate 16 years of marriage this year. We have come from living in that stolen van to recently building a brand new beautiful home. My addiction may have robbed me of being the kind of parent my daughter needed me to be, but recovery has given me the ability to be the best Mimi ever. Because of recovery, today I'm privileged to work as a case manager for the Rockdale Accountability Court Program under the supervision of Honorable Superior Court Judge Robert Mumford and the State Court Judge Nancy Bills. I no longer stand before Superior Court judges in handcuffs, looking down at the floor in shame. But today, with my head held high, I stand with them, helping others rise above the destruction of the disease of addiction. Because of recovery, in November 2017, the Georgia Boards of Pardons and Parole granted me a full pardon and a full restoration of all my rights, even my gun rights. Almost 11 years ago, I found myself at the end of the road. Today, I choose to share that we do recover and that no addict seeking recovery should ever die from the horrors of addiction. I say to my peers, speak loudly about your recovery. Let our community know that the old lie of once an addict, always an addict is dead. For they do not know that we do recover. To behavioral health and law enforcement, we are the people who suffer from the substance use disorders and mental illness, need your help finding effective ways to fight against the stigma in which our diagnosis, such as ours, can carry. Thank you. I am honored, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to share my message of recovery.
Suzanne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very, very much. It's important that we be reminded of what we're all about. Next, I want to call on Sandra Thomas, our Director of Executive Operations, going to make some special recognition of 2 officers that we have. And I think that's a great way to also begin the meeting, is appreciate the folks that are out there doing the work day in and day out. Just a note of disclaimer, I now understand why Sandra called and asked what I was wearing today. But, Sandra Thomas.
And we know that's not true. Well, good morning. Good morning. Chairman, to the board. It's always a great time and a great honor to recognize some of our amazing staff. And it's just an example of the standard we want and look for when we're hiring our staff. So, with that being said, let's start first with Officer Scoggins. Officer Scoggins, can you please come forward? Stand right here. It's like embarrassing. So on May 14, 2019, Officer Chad Scoggins was honored to be selected as one of the Floyd County's Law Enforcement Officers of the Year at the Respect for Law Enforcement Luncheon hosted by the Seven Hills Rotary Rome Kiwanis and the Rome Rotary Club. Chad embodies what it means to be a selfless servant and is constantly seeking opportunities to help others advance. Chad is in the current leader of the Rome Circuit Arrest Team and also volunteered to represent the Rome office on newly created drug court board and serves as a drug court officer, all the while managing his caseload. His duties to the drug court and to our department keeps him busy with late night calls, court staffings, and working closely with our community partners to secure more needed resources for many returning citizens. Because of his strong commitment to public service, Chad is a leader among his peers, a professional, always remains humble, always willing to help, and always doing the right thing, even when no one is looking. Assistant Chief Brandon Henderson described Chad as, Chad is consistent and committed. During the early days of DCS, Chad constantly helped train and transition staff in the processes associated with supervising parolees. A big congratulations to Chad for his service and the acclaim he has bestowed upon himself and DCS. So on behalf of Commissioner Nell and Assistant Commissioner Scott Maurer and the agency, we are proud to present you with a certificate for your dedication and commitment, not only to the agency, but to yourself. Okay. Officer Melville, it's your turn to be embarrassed. So this is Officer Andre Melville. On May 14, 2019, Officer Andre Melville was recognized by the Exchange Club of Brunswick as one of the Law Enforcement Officers of the Year for Glenn County. This prestigious accomplishment comes as a result of Officer Melville's strong dedication to the citizens of Glenn County and his willingness to continually go above and beyond the call of duty. Officer Melville not only effectively supervised those on his caseload, instead, he frequently assists multi-jurisdictional task force with special operations, serving warrants, conducting searches. Officer Melville's commitment to collaboration exemplifies the value DCS places on teamwork, and his fellow colleagues often remark on his service. Assistant Chief Zachary Westbury, when introducing Officer Melville for this award, stated that he was honored and recognized Officer Melville for this continued hard work, long hours, and stellar service to the community and to the state of Georgia. So on behalf of Commissioner Michael Nell, Scott Maurer, and Assistant Commissioner Scott Maurer, we're proud to present you with this certificate. for your community.
Thank you, Sandra. You know, it's interesting when you hear about the law enforcement aspect of it, but these are the same individuals that the next moment will turn around helping and assisting to keep folks out of jail. And that's what makes our profession unique. Chad, I gotta tell you, it rings true. Behind every good man is a great woman. His wife is also employed with us as an investigator. So we appreciate what you all do as a family, there's no doubt. And Officer Melville, I understand you're a New England Patriot fan, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Very proud to be one.
Okay, you be careful going home. I'm tired of seeing you on the Super Bowl, but nevertheless. No, but congratulations to both of you. We appreciate what you do for us and for the communities you serve. You do it well.
Thank you.
Next, before I get into my remarks, I want to have our Chief of Staff and Assistant Commissioner Scott Maurer talk about some organizational changes. Not only does Scott serve as Chief of Staff, he also sits on the Probable Cause Committee and actually chairs that committee for Post. He sits on the Victim Compensation Board. He has his hands full doing things in addition to really guiding the agency. And I just never want to miss an opportunity to publicly thank him for what he does in representing our agency. So, Scott?
Thank you. Good morning, and I would say that my primary function is really keeping Michael out of trouble, so keeps me busier than anything else, really.
Thank you, Scott.
I just want to give you really a few quick updates, and kind of continuing with the sports theme. Michael used to make fun of me all the time because I would listen to NPR on the radio. He's like, "Why do you listen to that smart radio?" And so I've changed my game a little bit, started listening to a little bit more sports radio. And not being from Georgia, I've never been a huge fan of local sports teams, but over the years, it's kind of grown on me, especially with my kids being fans of the Falcons and the Braves and stuff. But when you talk about organizational changes, so right now there's, the NBA Finals just ended, the NBA Draft is, I think, tonight. We've got in the middle of a baseball season, and every time I listen to the radio, sports radio, they're always talking about all the changes, right? This person's being drafted, that person's being drafted, this person's being offered a big contract, that one's transferring here, and so everybody's clamoring to be the best, and they're usually paying a lot of money to be the best. We as an agency have set an example as a national leader since probably this first or second year we've been created. And we continue to want to be the best at what we do. But one of the ways that we've done it over the years is not to do it with additional resources and adding, we don't have signing bonuses. We don't have big contracts to give to people. So we recently, going into our fourth year, have looked at kind of our organizational structure and realized that we have a really strong team. We have a lot of good people. We have a lot of strong people. But we could probably be a little bit more efficient and a little bit more effective if we just move some of those people around into different roles. And streamline the agency to make it more efficient for us. So there's quite a few changes within the org structure, as well as within field operations, executive operations. I don't necessarily want to take up all of your time today going through every one of those changes. Shortly after today's meeting, you'll receive an email that highlights what those changes are. We'll also attach the new organizational chart, and you'll see that there's quite a few changes, but they're all for the better. And I think that probably the thing that is most impressive is that we're doing it with internal staff. We're not adding any positions. We're not creating new positions. We're doing it with the team that we have, and we strongly believe that we have one of the strongest teams in state government, and we think that we'll be more efficient, more effective going forward, and continue to be a national leader with those changes. So we'll share those with you shortly after today's meeting. If you have any questions about any of those changes, feel free to reach out to myself or Michael, and we'll certainly talk through it some more. The other thing I just wanted to update you on real quickly is continuing with the theme of being a national leader. I think the American Probation and Parole Association holds conferences twice a year. I think since the existence of DCS, we've been asked to come present on some aspect of our agency at every one of those conferences since we were in existence. And the next one is in San Francisco in August. We will continue our tradition of presenting there. We'll be presenting on the Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative at that conference, as well as, I believe, maybe the second year we were in it, it was year 2. We shared with you guys that we were asked to present at the World Congress on probation supervision. The World Congress is held every 2 years. I think the first one was in Los Angeles. The last one was in Tokyo. We've been asked to come back and do 2 presentations at the next World Congress, which is actually in Sydney, Australia, both on the Georgia Prison Reentry Initiative and then also our use of technology and that data-driven decision-making. That conference is in September. So I share that with you to share that we continue to be on a national front as a national leader and asked to present on a lot of the good work that happens in this agency every day. Staying on the line of conferences, the Georgia GPACS conference, you may have received a notification, if not you will soon, will be August 21st through 23rd in Savannah at the Hyatt. I believe some of the members may have already signed up for or booked their reservations. Of course, as board members, you guys can be put on our direct bill for that conference, and so we would love to have each and every one of you present at that conference. It's a good time to network with our team as well as teams from misdemeanor probation and other community supervision agencies. And then lastly, I'll share with you some more good news and recognition. The Alcohol and Drug Certification Board of Georgia is holding its annual conference this week in Marietta, and the Department of Community Supervision has been selected to receive the Award for Excellence in Treatment Centers and Recovery Services. So tomorrow afternoon I will go over there and accept that award on behalf of the agency. And it just goes to show that the hard work that we're doing in the field every day and the focus, Michael mentioned, it's easy to do law enforcement. I mean, that's the easy part of the job. The hard part of the job is addressing those criminogenic needs. And there's so many examples of that around the state that are happening every day in a very positive way. And so we're very honored to be able to receive that recognition from the Alcohol and Drug Certification Board of Georgia. So that concludes my updates. If you have any questions, otherwise, yes, sir.
You booked Commissioner Niles' ticket to Sydney yet?
No, we.
Sorry.
We'll work on it.
No.
Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Scott. Just like with your pan, it's a small crew going, I can assure you of that.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm not. Just a few other things. I wanted to highlight 2 service projects that we are doing. We talk about 1 officer, 1 family, 1 community. We believe strongly in community engagement. We have a service project later this month with homeless, where we are collecting and dispensing care packages to homeless throughout Atlanta. And then we have also partnered with 2 elementary schools to help them with back to school items. And I want to thank Sherry Chambers for leading that up for us. That's not just here in central office, that is also throughout the state at every one of our offices. And many of these items that we are collecting and distributing are actually going also to those that we have under our supervision, as well as perhaps their family members as well. We're also embarking in a procedural justice pilot. Bert, I'm going to ask you, what circuits are those in?
It's going to be in Chattahoochee, Cherokee, Tallapoosa, Douglas, and Northeastern.
Northeast. So we have 5 circuits that we are piloting procedural justice with through the Arnold Foundation, as well as others, APPA, and I forget another one. But nevertheless, CSG, Council of State Government. So you've probably heard a lot about procedural justice. Many times people come into the system and they're not perhaps provided opportunities to ask about the system or explain why they're there or what it is all about. Or even if they've got complaints about the system, where do they take those complaints to? And procedural justice is all about fairness to those that we have under our supervision, because it is somewhat of a contract. They've got a contract with the court or the parole board to do certain things. It's our role to help them successfully complete that, and they are a key part, so they need to be involved. So I look forward to sharing more news with you about that. You probably received the quarterly newsletter. I think it was last night. Jamel Washington does a phenomenal job. Is Jamel's not here? Phenomenal job with that newsletter. 14 pages. I could take the rest of the afternoon going through all the good work being done throughout the state with DCS, from day reporting center graduations to reconnecting families to serving on task force. You name it, it is in there. And that's just a snapshot of the quarter. And I couldn't be more proud of what that quarterly newsletter represents for our agency and, more importantly, for what is being done for the state of Georgia. So if you haven't had the opportunity to read it, please do so. It's very impactful. I want to commend Sandra Thomas. We sent to the Women in Corrections Leadership Conference 3 individuals, Sandra and Marianne Dillard and Shantae Porter. But that wasn't enough. When they came back, we wanted to see what are we doing that's not so good in leadership for females specifically. They were probably a little bit too candid, a little more so than I wanted to hear, but I got the message. And they asked for our support to carry it on, and without hesitation, we said, absolutely, you ask us what we need. Sandra and her team coordinated the first Women's Leadership Summit in Athens. It was a 2-day summit. When you read the evaluations after, it was phenomenal. What it told me is what took you so long, speaking to me. Sonia Fillingham, thank you. The comments that were received with your presentation were just absolutely phenomenal, and we appreciate the support. We will continue to do that because we know in certain segments of leadership there are roles that some can address and some collectively need to address, and we needed to be supportive of that and take advantage of the talent we have in growing and developing that. So Sandra, thank you for what you did with that. A bit of sad news, Jennifer Thomas is leaving. She will be going July 1 over to Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. She's on vacation. Nikki and I, we were joking, said, man, she did that right, you know. Take a couple weeks vacation before you roll out the door. That's a good game plan. But I can't think of anybody that deserves time off more than Jennifer. When you talk about somebody who's passionate about what they do and what she has provided to DCS, as well as what she has provided to service deliveries of family violence, but more importantly, those that are impacted or affected by family violence. So we wish her well, and at the next board meeting, we'll have an opportunity to kind of celebrate her accomplishments as well as the new role. Basic graduation next Friday, 2 o'clock. It is at State Offices South. So we greatly appreciate Commissioner Ward opening up his doors and allowing us to come there rent-free. I thought that was pretty nice of him. But we will be there, and that speaks to the partnerships that we have. Certainly amongst the board and the agencies and communities you represent, we're stronger when we work together. I can't help but to think about Ben Franklin when he said we can hang together or we can hang separately. And I prefer to hang together because I think we're so much stronger. So one last thing before I turn over to the regular, I want to show you the dashboard that we have created. And if we can have that admin, Nick Powell, Dr. Nicholas Powell.
Yes, sir.
Where you at? Come on up here, Nick. I chuckle because I knew him before he was a doctor. Anyway, Nick is over our research and strategic planning. And as you know, we have worked hard in establishing just a dashboard to show metrics and how we're doing at any given time. I make no apologies for being somewhat slow and methodical about this process because it's too important to not get right. This is just a sample showing. There's far more in development. It does not calculate everything that we do or what we are about. But if you don't start with establishing a good baseline, you're just going to go down a bad road and continue to make bad decisions. We need to be an agency about data-driven decisions. Also, you've heard it stressed in GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. That's the last thing we want to do is make decisions because there was garbage put into a system. So I wanted to briefly highlight some of this with Senate bill, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, add anything you want to as we move through this. Nick will be the one to say what Michael meant to say was Senate Bill 174 was designed to reduce caseloads and get folks off of supervision that perhaps didn't need to be on supervision. From FY19 back to FY18, the second quarter, we were able to decrease supervision of offenders by 6,300. Doesn't sound like a lot, but what we've done now is our average caseload, and there's a lot that goes into that, is now to 110. That's the lowest it's ever been. So when you talk about the creation of DCS, that's exactly what it's about. We're starting to see the maximization through the creation of this agency. One thing we look at is arrest. You know that arrest certainly leads to prison, and you'll see right here that our arrests are down. This is all interconnected because if officers have more time to spend with individuals, they have an opportunity to address issues before they perhaps lead to an arrest. And that's the name of the game. So there are decrease in arrests, continue to go down. That's a good thing. When we look at revocations by quarter, you may have seen Council of State Government just recently issued a finding that nearly half of all nationwide folks are sitting in prison for technical violations of probation or parole. What I want you to hear loud and clear, that does not take into account the good work Georgia is doing, meaning that is not reflective of Georgia. The legislature was very smart back in 1991 when they said you cannot be revoked to prison based solely on a technical violation. So they put in safeguards for that. Those that are going back to prison, it's either a new felony offense, a serious violent misdemeanor, or a sex offender or some other that have violated a special condition. So you're starting to hear more and more from a national front about mass incarceration. Does that mean we don't have flaws in our system? Of course we have flaws. Can we continue to work hard to reduce those going to prison? Of course we can. But I always want it to be known the good work that's being done, not just in DCS, but from the legislative front and the judicial front to address technical violations going to prison. So you'll see our revocations are actually on a downward slope. That too is a good thing because that's truly when you're talking about preventing additional crimes, remembering the only way they can go into the system predominantly is by a new felony criminal offense. So that is certainly a good news slide. Nick, anything we need to add on that?
No, I think you covered it.
Good. Okay. Officer offender interactions. I'm supposed to be scrolling this up. If you'll notice here, the number of interactions from the first quarter of FY18 are trending up, and look at FY19. We had a slight downtick, but again, the more time you spend, the better the likelihood of success you're going to have when they talk about average of 10 minutes for a successful contact to actually take place in intervention. When we can create more time for these officers to have quality contacts, that's where we get these results. You'll see our drug screens are also, we're increasing on the number of drug screens. What I really like about that, you're increasing the number of drug screens, but your arrest rates and your prison commitments are going the other way. So the interventions are working, the treatment referrals are also working. And again, this is just a sampling. Day reporter said graduation rate, 36%. Now I've got to be the first to admit, I'm not a treatment focused guy. That's not my forte. Scott has worked with me so much on this, and when I would question, what do you mean relapse is part of addiction? You know, it just was counterintuitive to me. He finally convinced me, okay, that's real, Michael. I asked him about this number, and he said, you know what? This is actually right within the guidelines of success when you talk about this population, because this is the most vulnerable population, most inclined to fail. So it's offender outcomes by dosage and cognitive programming. But here's what's more important. We have 35-day reporting centers throughout the state. Think about this. It is a diversion. Without those, where would they be? They would be in prison. And that's the thing. But it's the second, third order effects of family reunification and just as Suzanne talked about, getting your family back and being a contributing member of the society. Employment. I think we can do better, just quite candidly. One of the things with employment that we've got to be mindful of, and this is indicative and speaks directly to the fact, it is difficult for convicted felons to get jobs. It is very, very difficult. Many of these individuals that are not represented in this 69% are doing work where it's cash. They can't produce a pay stub because they can't get a job because they're a convicted felon. So we continue to work strongly with that, especially when the economy is good. More jobs are created, but a lot of times these folks are still not given the opportunity to produce and perform. So we're going to continue to work on that in our employment arena. While 69% is good, I'll be the first to tell you it can be better. Tom?
Michael, is there any indication like that 30% is really hard to employ? Do they have multiple felonies or a certain type of felony? Have y'all kind of broken that down?
Go ahead.
I would say, well, that's what's kind of tricky about this topic.
Yeah.
The Prison Policy Institute just released a report that they looked at people who were convicted of felonies and said that their unemployment rate was higher than that of the Great Depression.
Right.
So it's like a lot of it could be just policies on hiring, or it could just be, or it could be that background, or it could be that disconnect with the labor market has created a lack of skills that's hurting them in the interviews. So it's a really nuanced topic. So it's hard to say what exactly speaking to that 31%.
But I will say, Tom, I think as an employer, when they see convicted felon, that's enough. They don't care whether it's 3, 4, 5, or 6, and you don't even care what it's about. That's just enough to disqualify them to even get them to the door. Even with all the ban the box, there's certainly workarounds that you can do if you don't want to employ somebody on ban the box. And it really works against us, but we continue to do our best. But a very, very good question.
Because of the positive job market we've got right now, it may be slow, Michael, but I think you're going to see employers have to change that. They've got to have workforce. I live in Bartow County. We're 3% unemployment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got more industry coming in. We don't have enough workforce.
Yep, absolutely.
So those guys that might have been initially undesirable will become very desirable now.
They
get
will.
them job training, get them skill.
Yep, and Steve, that's a very good point. I know Governor Kemp, one of the things he talked about was a middle skill set. And these individuals are the ones that are extremely ripe for development of middle skills that can fill those jobs. So that's something I think is an area we certainly can focus on and get this number raised if we can look at folks on middle skill, without a doubt. But your point is well taken. Victim restitution payments, you'll see a huge spike and then a drop. We've looked at this and we've analyzed it. One of the things that I think was happening back in FY18, the third quarter, there were a lot of victims that we had lost contact with, that they had not kept their address current with us. We were getting restitution checks returned. So there was a strong focus on that. Compliments to Kent Young out of Field Operations, who worked diligently as well with all the staff out of the state to find these recipients that they were either undetermined or restitution was undeliverable. And I think when you see that uptick, that is when that began. So the downward slide, I'm not as concerned because that was the anomaly, is identifying these individuals and the big push. So it doesn't necessarily mean that fewer are getting paid. It could have been the spike that they were paid, but we continue to look at that. Finally, community service. You'll see right here that our numbers in community service are down. One thing, I would not be surprised if we start to see it go down a little bit more, and here's why. Community service should be about what you're giving back, not just the number of hours you are performing. it ought to be substantive, it ought to be quality, it ought to mean something to it when you talk about getting back to the community in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Quality over just the quantity. But nevertheless, we are undergoing some changes with community service and or in that program. But the other thing is, when you talk about the value, you're talking about nearly $1 million a year in community service, that if you put that to a cost ratio that is being provided through our community service program. So Nick, anything you want to add?
The only thing I would add is, as we continue to have these conversations, is just keep in mind that like mass supervision isn't just about volume. We're also supervising a different composition of caseloads. So, we're supervising more higher risk and higher needs than ever before. At the same time, we're trending in the right direction. So even some of these gains that are seen relatively flat or relatively small, they're a win because they're across a higher risk spectrum. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Does. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. And
Are you seeing any change in the hours that the courts are ordering versus what's being performed? Is that?
Steve, that's what we got to look at, because that's an important point. The number of folks getting community service as well as the hours, but we also now have a greater appetite for converting fines over to community service.
But when the economy was tight, we saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
Now the economy is better, we're seeing less of it, at least on the misdemeanors.
No, you're
probably saying
you're right on the mark. Absolutely. So that's exactly what dashboards are about, is to get in there and find out, and we establish a baseline and we move from there. So thank you, Dick.
Commissioner, is
yes.
this posted on the website?
Not yet. It's not
Is
posted on the
that your
website.
plan, or I'd
will
like
be.
to have an electronic copy, so.
It will be,
I didn't wanna-
and we will certainly make sure, certainly for the board members.
Thanks.
But I think, Commissioner, one thing we wanted to do is get it up and running,
Yeah.
and then start adding useful information
Yeah.
to corrections, to DJJ, to DFACS, everyone that can utilize this information. But it will eventually. So a repository, if you will, of the information.
Yeah, I just want to commend you.
Good.
It's really, really nice baseline start, as you said.
Thank
Very
you.
informative, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Finally, and thank you for the time. I want to thank the board. You have such important roles in your real job. You take the time to support DCS. You understand what we're doing. You believe in what we're doing. And I just personally want you to know how much that means. I mean, when you look at, just for an example, the decisions the parole board had to make over the past few days, and then the decisions and the protocol that Tim Ward will have to be making this evening. There's a lot of heavy-duty stuff that's going on, and I just want to tell you, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. And I know every one of our staff members appreciate you being in their corner, letting us know when we're not getting it right, and supporting us and cheering us on when we are. So that will conclude my remarks, if no other questions.
Is there any questions from the board?
Hey, Michael?
Yes, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the dashboard, and also I wanted to publicly acknowledge the appreciation that the parole board has for the quality of supervision that you're providing to us at this time. What you stated in your dashboard comes as no surprise to me, because I can see it in our day-to-day activities. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Chairman Barner. Very much appreciated.
Excellent. All right. Mr. David Morris.
Morning, Chairman, members of the board.
Good morning.
You must really hate me. I have to follow a commissioner, assistant commissioner, and a doctor. As an operational guy, to give my presentation. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before I get started, I want to personally congratulate the officers that are here. Thank you for what you do for our agency and for our division. It's much appreciated. None of this stuff would be possible if you guys weren't out there doing the job day in and day out. So I appreciate you. As you know, House Bill 470 requires DNA samples retroactively to be collected on first offenders and conditional discharge. We're currently working through these logistics and moving this forward to ensure we're in compliance with the law and making positive progress. And Angel Ryan is in here. She's doing most of the heavy lifting. Angel, raise your hand. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. I'm pleased to announce we finished our first agency GCIC audit.
That's great.
Lessons were learned, certainly, but all in all, it was a positive audit. For us, for them, also lessons learned. So William Curry and James Bergman did the heavy lifting on that. James, appreciate that. Good work. Michael mentioned homelessness. We're continuing to work through that initiative. As I mentioned before, we're down from about 1376 to around 640. Michelle Stanley and I in reentry are going to work closely to ensure that community coordinators and housing coordinators are continuing to build that capacity for the housing for these individuals. We attended just yesterday, senior management attended a Love Beyond Walls. It's a homeless program here in Atlanta, and it was very, very impressive. And she and I are going to meet with the director, who was once homeless as well, now has 4 college degrees, a published book, very impressive, Terrence Lester. So we're going to meet with him to see if we can further our goal to 0, and also see if we can get some different ideas. So as you know, with 40,000 cases coming on every year, that number is always going to be fluid. The goal is 100. Is it possible? Not with 40,000 cases coming on, but our goal is to get as close as possible. So more to come on that. I recently met with Nikki, our new interim director of family violence, and I think that was a very positive meeting. At least I thought so. Worked on some ideas for policy, additional training, gave her access to our portal so she can look at case interactions and see if there's trends and red flags that we can be looking for. We also have 4 ride-alongs with Georgia Supreme Court interns over the next few weeks. And that's looking forward to that. That's a great opportunity to present who we are, also educate these individuals as to a broader spectrum of the community corrections practice. Now, again, Angel, Michael mentioned about Commissioner mentioned about the community service overhaul. Angel spearheads that, and we're looking at how can we be more effective and efficient and bolster that program. I mentioned to Angel, if you're showing 1 million hours completed, that sounds like a lot of hours completed. But if there's 10 million hours completed, ordered and only 1 was completed, that's not really a good outcome. So she's working on that, policy, IT reports, training, and we'll also hold a statewide meeting with all the community service coordinators in each circuit. So try to put more emphasis on that. As far as our gang initiatives, Andrew Jerem is assigned to the FBI Streets Gang Task Force. He's working with the GBI and other agencies to make a recommendation on the development of a statewide gang database. So looking forward to that recommendations forthcoming. To enhance our gang supervisions, to be in compliance with Governor Kemp's anti-gang initiative. Andrew is also at the spearhead of that. 14 circuit STGs, and STG is a security threat group, which is our gang individuals that are going to a Georgia Gang Investigators Association training in Savannah next month. We're also collaborating with GDC to further tracking of gang members while they're in prison and then when they transition under DCS supervision. And to also further collaborate, we have assigned part-time a criminal intel analysis to work in the GDC Fusion Center to enhance communication there. Finally, we sent 46 CSOs to the 2019 National Law Enforcement Training on Child Exploitations held here in Atlanta from June 11th to the 16th. And we also recently assigned Tyler Denham to the DEA Strike Force. That'll be effective July 1, and we will have now 14 task force officers at the federal level. So without any questions, that's all I have to present.
Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Michelle Stanley, Reentry Services.
Greetings again, Chairman
Yes, ma'am.
House,
Yes,
board
ma'am.
members. Just a few highlights and notes for reentry services. We'll have a day reporting center graduation tonight in Gwinnett County. It's the second graduation. It'll be at the Source Church in Beaufort, Georgia at 6 o'clock. Senator Utterman was served as our keynote speaker this evening, and we anticipate having 6 additional legislators with us in attendance. As it relates to our partnership in terms of housing for reentry, David mentioned us working together, of course, to try and do what we can to combat our homeless population as the community coordinators and housing coordinators work to build that capacity for individuals willing to rent and lease to those individuals. We also have that financial program under RPH where we have 39 active providers currently. At the end of May, we had actually placed 940 offenders, which gave us an average of about 85 placements per month. Of course, sex offenders still tend to be that population that needs our attention the most. When we ended our application process at the end of May, we had 10 new providers wanting to apply to come on board. 4 of those are interested in being sex offender providers. So we're excited about that and continue to keep that on our forefront and continue to try and generate other individuals that's willing to house that population. As it relates to our statewide expansion of Georgia PRI, based on our budget initiative this year and budget approval, we will be able to expand to 5 additional circuits. Those circuits will be Cherokee, Griffin, Lookout Mountain, Okmulgee, and Conasauga. We've already hired community coordinators that will start on July 1st, so we're excited about expanding capacity in those areas. Also, with that budget approval, we had 5 in-reach coordinators that was also approved. That will allow us to now only be in 1 to 2 prison facilities, and we reduced our windshield time down to only 60 miles in between facilities, so that should allow us to be able to continue to increase the number that we're in-reaching. As of today, we've in-reached this fiscal year a little over 15,000. So with the addition of the other 5 individuals and being able to reassign their prisons, we're hoping to be able to touch more. Also, with the addition of the new circuits coming on board, we would like to be able to expand further. Our resources we currently have in community capacity is currently a little over 4,000. Just this fiscal year alone, we brought on 813 new providers. Just a couple of highlights in the community. DeKalb County is working with a partnership with Hope Atlanta Veterans Workforce Housing Program, which is targeting newly released up to 6 months veterans that are homeless or at risk to be homeless. That won't just only serve DeKalb County, they actually will be able to serve Bartow, Butts, Cherokee, Clayton, Cobb, Coweta, Douglas, Fayette, Fulton, Gwinnett, Henry, Newton, Halden, Rockdale, and Spalding. And not only is it just housing, but also helping them with job placement and wraparound supportive services. So we're truly excited about that partnership, and the community coordinator Sharon Allman is working very closely with them on that. In Richmond County, we're partnering with Second Chance Jobs. This not only just looks at life skills and job skills, but it's also an apprenticeship program. So we're excited to actually have our first apprenticeship program that actually will be a year-long program, but the individuals that are able to be a part of that apprenticeship can actually earn up to $30,000 while in that apprenticeship and come out with the skill that they're able to be able to go to work and earn up to a capacity of possibly $70,000. And that's a partnership with the Second Chance Jobs in the city of Augusta. And our community coordinator, Reggie Colfer, is spearheading that partnership. So we're truly excited and looking forward to what will come from that. The Counseling Service Unit, in conjunction with the Training Academy, has also implemented how being trauma-informed provides necessary tools in the criminal justice system to know how to respond to that when they see it while out doing supervision. To date, we've had an opportunity to train a little over 300, almost 400 individuals, and that is ongoing, and we'll continue to train officers in that. That's all I have today. Are there any questions from the board? I'm sorry.
Are there any questions from the board?
Great report, thank you. Well, thank you.
And thank you for Ms. Kilgore presentation. Every now and then we sit here and we gravitate toward our own responsibilities, but to take that off and listen to the impact, it's greatly appreciated from our perspective. So thank you for that feed of mine.
I didn't want to do a disservice in her bio, but I felt her story could be best told by her.
Yeah. Thank you much. All right, Ms. LaDonna is here.
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning. Morning, Chairman, board members.
Morning. Good morning.
As he said, my name is LaDonna Birdie, and I'm a senior compliance monitor in the Misdemeanor Information Oversight Unit. And this morning, I'd like to give you an update on some of the statistics we have. Currently, to date, we've completed 44 on-site visits. We have reviewed over 2,400 misdemeanor cases. We have 77 providers. 57 of those providers are governmental and 22 of those are private. We have 943 employees, 788 court services agreements. 639 of those are private, 149 of those are governmental. Now on to our training department. We have hosted 9 statewide trainings, and 2 of those were essential skills for trainers. With this training, we were able to provide entities with the skills to conduct their own in-house training. These trainings have been approved by Post. To date, we've had 289 attendees, and we do have 7 more trainings left for the remainder of the year. Next, we are very excited to share with you our NPOU guide. I believe the link was sent to you guys. If you haven't had an opportunity to view it, please do so, and we encourage you to do so. It is an all-encompassing guide that will be shared on our webpage to continue to promote transparency within the agency. And lastly, but not least, we'd like to give a special thank you to Steve Queen for attending our offsite that we had in Helen on April the 25th to 26th. He took the time out of his schedule to come be with us in our team building activities, and just want to give you a big, big thank you for that.
It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
That's right up your alley, right?
Barring any questions, I believe that concludes my report.
I reviewed the guide and I thought it was absolutely stellar. So hats off to everybody that was involved in making sure that it happened.
I want to second that as a person who really has great admiration for user-friendly information.
Yes.
That really looked, the look and the feel and the information really outstanding. I've already forwarded it to my public affairs team. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Great. Thank you. It's collaboration with our training department, our online training department, so that's great.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
I'll make a comment about the training. I did attend the last Essential Skills for Trainers class that was conducted. Outstanding. They did a great job putting it together. A lot of information packed into to 2 days. Great presenters, great organization. I came away with it with a lot of information that I'll take back not only to my agency, but all of the misdemeanor agency providers that I can. So that was really good.
Sound like they were touched. So great job.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is Commission on Family Violence, Ms. Nikki. I'm not gonna say your last name.
It's okay, I'm used to responding to virtually anything with a name like Lemeshka, so. Good morning. Well, it's already been mentioned a couple of times, so perhaps our biggest update, the cat is out of the bag, but as you've heard, Jennifer Thomas is planning to leave the agency, and effective July 1st, she'll be taking her new position at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. She will be the Director of Strategic Partnerships there, so that's a newly created position, but we're fortunate that she's still going to be intersecting a lot with all of us, so she's just broadening her reach throughout the state. I will mention of her position that, we are a small but mighty staff, and certainly her footprint is very large. We're awaiting the governor to appoint somebody. We're all hopeful, and we know that he has already met with a couple of candidates, and that's well in the works, so we're hopeful that we'll have an announcement here soon of who will be filling her shoes. In the meantime, what we have been doing in terms of transitioning, there's a lot of balls in the air, obviously, when we don't have somebody already in works to take her seat. So I do want to just, while I'm here, say very much thank you to not only the executive team at DCS and everybody that contributes so much to the great work that's done here every day, but also we're leaning a little bit more heavily on fiscal and HR too during this transition. So I just want to appreciate the work that everybody's doing. Outside of that, what we have primarily been focused on here recently, this is the time of year when all of our work, virtually by all staff, turns to planning and gearing up for our annual conference. So just an update on that, the Commission on Family Violence annual conference is going to be held September 8th through 11th at the Classic Center in Athens. This is our 25th annual conference, and so our theme this year is supporting survivors and restoring hope, 25 years ago to 25 years ahead. So we've lined up all of our keynote speakers. which include Vanessa McNeil, an award-winning documentary filmmaker and speaker on human trafficking and male sexual violence. And she has a documentary that will also be shown through the assistance of the University of Georgia as well. We have Melissa Jeltsin, a writer and editor for HuffPost who writes about gender-based violence, as well as the High Point, North Carolina Collaborative. That's a multidisciplinary, interagency, community-based model of responding to accountability for perpetrators of abuse. So we're really excited about them. They're heavily law enforcement influenced community response model. Most exciting about the conference where we sit currently, though, is that we opened registration last week, and we already have 393 people registered for it. So we're already at about 2/3 of our capacity just a week into our registration. So I think that speaks really highly for the work that we've been doing on this conference over the past 25 years. I also do want to say thank you to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. They are providing scholarships this year for 50 Department of Community Supervision officers, as well as sexual assault programs, domestic violence programs, 48 DFACS employees, 30 first responders, as well as the Administrative Office of the Courts is providing scholarships for judges to attend. So we're really excited about where we sit with the conference this year, and we hope to see many of you in attendance as well. I think that's probably the most substantive piece of the work we're doing right now, aside from the transition. So unless anyone has any questions.
Is there any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, do you mind emailing the registration information for the conference?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. It is available on our website, gcfe.ga.gov. We have a page designated for registration that you can click right through, but I'll be sure to share that so it can go out.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Here none. Thank you for the
Thank
good
you.
report. Moving on to item number 10, is there anything under old business to be brought forth? Hearing none, moving on to new business, and I understand we have a bond resolution by Mr. Knott.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Board, the General Assembly has appropriated certain funds so that the Department of Community Supervision may request the issuance of general obligation debt for certain projects. We're asking the Board to adopt this resolution requesting that the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission issue general obligation bonds for projects that include repairs to our Athens, Augusta, Dublin, Rome, and Waycross offices, and it also includes purchases of 25 vehicles.
All right. Is there any questions about what you have been, or what you have heard concerning the bond resolution of the upkeep of the offices and purchase of 25 cars? Hearing none, all those in favor of the bond resolutions to be going forth, raise a hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hear none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion.
I have it here for you to sign.
Is there anything else under new business to be brought for the board? Any further new business to be brought forth? Hearing none. Michael, that concludes the presentations that we have heard, and we thank you for a job well done from a board's perspective. Every day I come, it's something new that I take back and challenge our system on, and I've got 1.5 pages of notes. So thank you for all of the individuals that came out to support each other. Keep that up. This job is hard enough as it is. Keep supporting each other and keep doing what you're doing, and you are making a difference. Anything from the board?
I just wanted to make sure that I echoed how proud I was of DCS doing the Women in Leadership Summit. I thought it was absolutely great. And I appreciate DCS taking a step forward. I remember when I was working for a state agency, I longed for a meeting like that. And so I thought it was very impactful. The comments were great, feedback was great. And I was just very impressed that DCS stood as a leader to make sure that that summit happened. So thank you, Ms. Thomas, for bringing that forward. And where is Stanley? Is Stanley rich? Is she okay? I can't see her. Thank you, Ms. Neville, all the team. I don't want to leave anybody else out, but I thought it was great, and I hope that we do continue that initiative.
Any other board member have any comments? Hearing none, the Board of Community Supervision is hereby adjourned, and it's 11:10.